Welcome. Welcome, and thank you again for joining me. I think I've shared with you that this has been incredibly healing for me and very restorative and has helped me through my week. This is going to be our final session tonight in this format. As I think about music in May, which is what I'm calling it, I'm thinking a lot about pre-recorded meditative musical moments that might just allow a little more flexibility in my schedule. I think we're all kind of looking at our schedules and looking at our families and saying what do they need from us and where do we need to be. So I am so grateful to each and every one of you for your support through these few weeks. And as I've said before, we'll continue to get through it together. So I'm always just a Facebook message or an email or a call away. And often it does just as much for me as it does for you when you reach out. So let's begin with a nice deep belly breath. And I picture myself inhaling just anxiety and fear and the unknown that comes with this whole scenario, this whole pandemic. And as I exhale, I just want to push out all of it. Almost as though the weight of the world is being taken off my shoulders in that moment. I am realizing that we don't have the ability to fix this. As parents, as clergy people, we often find ourselves in a trap of trying to fix things for people, make people feel better. And I suspect our medical community is feeling the same way. How is it possible that we are not able to fix this? But I would also propose that there is healing, that there is fixing in just acknowledging our inability to fix it. That oftentimes just sitting together and acknowledging that the fear, the anxiety, the unknown is communal, offers us a chance to heal and take comfort in one another's arms. And so tonight, as I move through my program that I've prepared for you, I thought I would focus on hope. I think we have a lot of hopes going forward. We have been spending a lot of time in our house talking about what we are going to do when. And we use the phrase, when the world goes back to normal, or when everything opens up. And my son today, talking to my mom, said, when the coronavirus is gone, which is such an innocent kind of 6-year-old way to approach it. But it's true. We talk a lot about what we are going to do when it all opens. Sometimes we lie in bed and we think about which restaurant do we miss? Who are we going to visit? We're going to get on an airplane. Where are we going to go? And so I would like tonight to think a little bit about hope. What are our hopes for the future? What are we hoping to achieve at the end of all of this? And what do we hope life will look like? And who do we hope to be as we emerge from an unprecedented period of time? What will humanity look like? And what will that culture of compassion feel like as we come out of all of this? So I've put together some poetry and some songs that I find hopeful. I'll begin with a beautiful reading from a website called To Bend Light. It is poetry written by Alden Solovey, a Jewish poet and scholar. And he wrote this poem about Zoom, which I know seems a little tacky, but stay with me here. It's called The Blessing of Faces. So many beautiful faces, so many radiant souls shining forth into our hearts. Look at those eyes, the smiles, the hopes, the fears. The yearning, the questioning, the compassion, the love. Take it in. Take it all in. The tenderness, the humanity, the blessing of faces arrayed before you. The blessing of faces given and received. I'd like to invite you to just go to the side of your screen, and you can click sideways on an arrow and just look at one another's faces and give yourself a moment to be part of this virtual community. It is a sacred community, and it is one that will probably never happen again. There are people from all over here. But give yourself the blessing of faces, of knowing as you look through these faces that you are not alone and that you are not going through this alone. I'm going to try something a little bit different musically. My wonderful friend and colleague, Rabbi Brett Critchever, agreed to record for me some accompaniment. And so my hope is that this will work out and sound good. This is a prayer that I always find very healing. Hashkivenu, the text of Hashkivenu, asks God to spread a shelter of peace over us. And the beauty of that is that when you think about hope, you have to think that in ancient days, when the rabbis were writing this poetry and this liturgy and this prayer, the prayer was written because they literally did not know if they were going to wake up in the morning. Sleep was thought of as a half or semi-death state. They did not take for granted that after a certain amount of hours, they would open their eyes and get out of bed. And so Hashkivenu, which is a prayer that we say every night in our evening Ma'ariv liturgy, Hashkivenu is this beautiful prayer that asks God to shelter peace over us so that we may wake up in the morning. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom V'hamidenu shomreinu l'chaim. Spread the shelter of your peace over us. Guide us in wisdom, compassion, and trust. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom V'hamidenu shomreinu l'chaim. Save us for the sake of your name. Shield us from hatred, sorrow, and pain. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom V'hamidenu malkeinu l'chaim, l'chaim. Rabbi Brett, he's a good guy and a beautiful, beautiful musician. I came across this poem written by American poet William Stafford, who lived from 1914 to 1993. And it's called The Way It Is, and it's a poem on surviving crisis. Take from it what you will, perhaps uplifting, perhaps not. There's a thread you follow. It goes among things that change, but it doesn't change. People wonder about what you are pursuing. You have to explain about the thread, but it is hard for others to see. While you hold it, you can't get lost. Tragedies happen, people get hurt or die, and you suffer and get old. Nothing you can do can stop time's unfolding. You don't ever let go of the thread. And I wonder, as I read that in this moment, if that thread for us is community. Perhaps that thread is Judaism, is this idea of Jewish resilience and what that means to us as a people. Or perhaps that thread is hope, right? That we have all suffered trauma in the past and come through it stronger and different and changed. And so maybe in this moment, that's what that thread is. Somewhere over the rainbow, way up high, there's a land that I heard of once in a lullaby. Somewhere over the rainbow, skies are blue, and the dreams that you dare to dream really do come true. Someday I'll wish upon a star and wake up where the clouds are far behind me, where troubles melt like lemon drops away above the chimney tops. That's where you'll find me. Somewhere over the rainbow, bluebirds fly. Birds fly over the rainbow. Why then, oh, why can't I? If happy little bluebirds fly beyond the rainbow, why, oh, why can't I? I'm often holding back my volume just a little bit so as not to wake two children who are miraculously sleeping at the moment. The next poem, I really wish I could unmute my dad and have my dad read it, because it's just not going to sound good in my voice. But this is If by Rudyard Kipling. If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too. If you can wait and not be tired by waiting, or being lied about, don't deal in lies, or being hated, don't give way to hating, and yet don't look too good nor talk too wise. If you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two impostors just the same, if you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken, twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, or watch the things you gave your life to broken, and stoop and build them up with worn-out tools. If you can make one heap of all your winnings and risk it on one turn of pitch and loss, and lose, and start again at your beginnings and never breathe a word about your loss. If you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they are gone, and so hold on when there is nothing in you except the will which says to them, hold on. If you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings, nor lose the common touch, if neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you, if all men count with you, but none too much, if you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it. And, which is more, you'll be a man, my son. A beautiful poem about resilience and hope and our ability to push through even the most fearful of times. And really the reward that comes with it. I think inherent in this masterful writing is a sense of reward, a sense of assuring us that what comes out on the other end is worth it, worth fighting for and worth waiting for, and certainly worth holding on for. And so, of course, I, like you, find comfort not only in community, but in prayer, in the thought of God also allowing us to come through this, and in the reward of who we come out of it worthwhile. And so this is one of my favorite texts. Yehiyu leratzon imre fi vehegyon libi lefanecha. Adonai tzuri v'goali. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable before you, O God, my rock and my redeemer. Yehiyu leratzon imre fi vehegyon libi lefanecha. Adonai tzuri, Adonai tzuri, goali, goali. Yehiyu leratzon imre fi vehegyon libi lefanecha. Adonai tzuri, Adonai tzuri, v'goali, v'goali. Mr. Rogers' mother used to tell him, look for the helpers. And I suspect each and every one of you knows more about Mr. Rogers than I do, because in Canada I did not grow up with him. But in learning about his kind and gentle soul and reading beautiful articles about him, I'm fascinated by who this person is and was and really became to an entire society of people. Sarah Kettler wrote in 2018 in Biography magazine a beautiful article regarding an interview with Mr. Rogers. And she writes, in one video made for the post 9/11 world, Rogers declared, quote, no matter what our particular job, especially in our world today, we all are called to be tikkun olam, repairers of the world. The Hebrew words tikkun olam refer to actions taken to improve society, including caring for others, which was useful advice for a devastated nation. The phrase tikkun olam also reflected Rogers' ecumenical bent. Though he was an ordained Presbyterian minister, he'd always been open to and interested in different faith traditions and philosophies. In the same video spot, Rogers also said, thank you for whatever you do, wherever you are, to bring joy and light and hope and faith and pardon and love to your neighbor and to yourself. Rogers had always wanted a world that would be guided by understanding and love instead of being blinded by fear and hatred. His words demonstrated that the attacks hadn't destroyed his faith in neighborliness and provided a vision for how to move forward in a different world. Focusing on children allowed Rogers to, as he once told the New York Times, quote, nourish the future. In a commencement speech at Dartmouth College in June 2002, he shared what kind of future he was hoping for. He said, when I say it's you I like, I'm talking about that part of you that knows that life is far more than anything you can ever see or hear or touch. That deep part of you that allows you to stand for those things without which humankind cannot survive. Love that conquers hate, peace that rises triumphant over war, and justice that proves more powerful than greed. I have been thinking a lot about the helpers lately. Sure, at 7 p.m. we all kind of bang on our pots and pans and give love and gratitude to our entire incredible medical community. But today, I felt particularly grateful for another helper. Our 6-year-old son has been experiencing this in a whole different way. He has been experiencing the trauma that comes with this. And this is, frankly, part of why tonight is my final live session of doing this. Because I, as a mother, am feeling called to spend more time, particularly at bedtime, with him. He's been having a tough time. He's been wearing a hat and costume glasses that he's convinced himself he needs. And I see him just covering up and turning inward and almost covering up those feelings in the very pediatric way that he knows how to, right? To costume himself in that way. And in terms of meeting with his classroom in the morning, he hasn't really wanted to. And yesterday we had a breakthrough moment where I pushed and pushed about why are you so angry? And finally he burst into tears and said, I just want to go back to school. And I said, yep, me too. And so this morning, his teacher offered him 15 minutes of her time. His teacher, a woman with 2 small kids and a dog and a husband who works full-time, teachers who have been called to create online curricula for kindergarten students. I mean, it doesn't even exist. These are kids who learn by being in the classroom. And she offered him 15 minutes of one-on-one time, and I saw him light up in a way that I have not seen in 2 weeks. He talked to her about everything. He showed her his paintings, and then she paused and said, I miss being with you. And he said, I miss my friends. And she said, it's not the same not being in person. And he said, it's really not. And she said, but at least we can do this. And he smiled and he said, at least we can do this. And as a mother, to watch that helper in that way take time out of her day and offer that to a 6-year-old who's trying to process this world just as we all are, who, keeps asking me if he can have a mask so he doesn't get it. And I keep telling him he doesn't have to wear a mask. How does that make any sense, right? I am incredibly grateful for the helpers and really for the community that has emerged through all of this. We know our neighbors now. I recognize people who I never knew before. And I hope that they now know which door is mine and which one they can knock on if they need something. There's certainly no silver lining to be found in any kind of death, particularly the amount that we've seen in the world. But there is gratitude. There's gratitude for those who are helping each and every one of us. And today, that teacher is my family's hero. So I thought this song would be appropriate. I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue and clouds of white, the bright, blessed day, the dark, sacred night. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I hear babies cry. I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yes, I think to myself, what a wonderful world. It is a wonderful world that we have and that we live in. It is. And I think sometimes with the constant blast of news and social media, and I've talked about this before, we have to seek out the wonder. There is a movement in feeding us depressing, poisonous news. And yes, there is value in reading it and not being naive to what's going on, but we have to seek out the wonderful because it exists also. And we can't afford for our families and our communities and for our own mental health, we can't afford to greet the world in a depressed, anxiety-ridden state. We owe it to ourselves and our communities and our world to greet the world when we are safely able to with that same sense of wonder. And so as I thought about the idea of hope, I couldn't help but think about Hatikva. Hatikva means the hope. And today is Yom HaAtzmaut. It's Israel's Independence Day. And yesterday was Yom HaZikaron. Yom HaZikaron is Israel's Memorial Day. And very intentionally, the state of Israel paired the two together so that you would not celebrate independence without acknowledging the sacrifice that came with it. And as a country, they made the decision to say, yes, we want to celebrate our independence, but we also must remember how and why we got the independence in the first place. And Hatikva as a national anthem says so much about who we are as a people. The hope really describes who we as Jews are and always have been throughout history. Whether we are Jews who lived in some kind of diaspora, I know all of you know that my family, we are Jews from India, that it was that hope that my ancestors hung on to, the hope that there are other Jews in the world who will discover us, who will recognize us, and we will return to Israel. We will return. And that kind of resilience has pushed Jewish history forward for thousands of years. And I couldn't help but think about Yom HaZikaron. And Yom HaZikaron always brings up thoughts of my uncle Baruch, who Benjamin is named for. My uncle Baruch lost his life at 26 years old in the IDF in Israel and is buried on Har Herzl. And I think about an entire wing of my family who lives in Israel today. And I lived in Israel for a year in Jerusalem, and I think about what it means to live in that constant state of uncertainty. I lived in Israel in 2009 through the Gaza war. And when you live in Israel, you don't know what's going to happen in an hour, let alone next week. You don't know if the shuk, the market on Friday, is safe to go to before Shabbat or not. And when you say prayers for peace, they take on a whole new meaning when you don't know if you're going to hear that siren sound while you're out in the street, or if you'll just have to lock your blinds in your apartment because your apartment blinds double as a bomb shelter. And I think as a reaction to this reality, Israelis truly live. Israelis live life in every sense of the word, with every sense of their being. They say what they mean, sometimes, often at great cost. They are called sabras for a reason, right? They're prickly on the outside. They say what they mean. They don't hold back. Israelis love fiercely and passionately. And if you watch Israeli films and theater and look at their music, it's incredibly passionate. And they don't waste time. Israelis don't waste time on niceties because they don't know how much time they have in any given moment. They just don't know how much time they have. And so I think a lot about this situation almost teaching us what it's like to live in a really fragile life. We have all looked in the mirror in the past 6 or 7 weeks and been faced with our own mortality. What happens if I get it? Will I live? We have all thought that at some point. And I think that we can use this moment to learn about how crucial each moment of life is. I know it sounds so trite and it sounds so tacky to just say, well, live every moment till the fullest. I mean, we know, we've been told that for years, but I feel that I have learned that rather than spending time scrolling through a news feed on my phone, I can sit on my front step with a kid who's happy to look at clouds and show me the shapes in them, right? That the 2 minutes that I'm distracted from that, when it comes down to it, is it worthwhile? And so I thought that I would leave you tonight and leave this series by singing my favorite Israeli piece. And Rabbi Brett, recorded some accompaniment to it, but I think I'm going to sing it a little slower than that. So, thank you, Rabbi Brett. This is by Naomi Shemer, beautiful poet and songwriter. And there's something about this piece that just takes me back, I think because it's my mom's favorite. And so it just reminds me of childhood. Al hadvash ve'al ha'oketz, al hamar ve'hamatok, al biteinu hatinoket, shmor eli hatov, al ha'esh ha'mevoeret, al hamayim hazakim, al ha'ish hashav habayta min hamerchakim, al kol heile, al kol heile, shmor na li eli hatov, al hadvash ve'al ha'oketz, al hamar ve'hamatok, al natakor natua, al tishkach et hatikva, hashiveni ve'ashuva el haaretz hatova, shmor li al zeh habayit, al hagan al hachoma, miagon mipachad peta וממלחמה, שמור על המעט שיש לי, על האור ואל הטף, על הפרי שלא הבשיל עוד ושנאסף, על כל אלה, על כל אלה, שמור נא לי אלי הטוב, על הדבש ועל העוקץ, על המר והמתוק, על נתקור אל תשכח את התקווה, השיבני והשובה אל הארץ הטובה. Return me and return us, El Haaretz Hatova, to the land that is good. And of course, Naomi Shemer was talking about Israel, but it is my hope that we will soon be returned to our land that is good. And it is good. We just have to look for it. I thank you very much again for allowing me to lead this series and for joining me. You may not know this, but this is drastically outside of my comfort zone, specifically when it is broadcast on YouTube, not something I'm comfortable with at all, but I take comfort in knowing that you take comfort in it. So I thank you again, and I invite you always to sign on to IHC Shabbat services, 6:15 on Friday nights. I'm leading Torah study this Saturday morning at 9 a.m. There are plenty of ways to connect, and your community is never far away. Good night.